the help of conservative icon Ann Coulter and liberal firebrand Mimi Roth. Hi, ladies, who riled up so many of you last week. We'll debate the issue. So, ladies, welcome. Let's start, folks, with the public sale of cigarettes. Here again, the mayor.
We're proposing legislation that would prohibit display of tobacco products in most retail establishments. The reason? Such displays suggest that smoking is a normal activity and they invite young people to experiment with tobacco.
I don't really think it'll change, though, like teenagers knowing about it. Like, I feel like they already know about it, so it wouldn't really make a difference whether it was concealed or not.
So, Mimi, isn't that kid right? It doesn't really make a difference. Kids all know how to find cigarettes.
It actually makes a big difference. And one of the things that I admire about Mayor Bloomberg is he's a student of behavioral psychology. And what behavioral psychology tells us is if you increase the inconvenience just a little bit, you will reduce the behavior and the consumption. So having to ask and not having it visible so you don't have that impulse, it will reduce consumption, absolutely.
So you mean like condoms or what? Female hygiene products?
No, wait, not wanting to use condoms is a different issue, I think, Geraldo.
But Ann, do you think it is, are you a student of behavioral science?
I think I do not want a mayor who is a behavioral scientist experimenting on his citizens.
He's not, he's just aware of the reports.
I think we're about at the point that we should just, have the death penalty for smokers. This is the one thing we will stigmatize.
They do have a death penalty.
Everything,
self-induced.
Just everything that you can do to try to discourage behavior, it all comes down on the smoker. I mean, there's a lot of behavior that's worse. I praised the mayor for his campaign against teenage pregnancy, as he calls it. The problem is unwed pregnancy. And, it's liberals in the New York Times who are upset about the shaming campaign. Look, shaming clearly works. Liberals love shaming.
I agree. That's
love stigmatizing.
Yeah, stigmatization is
so when they pretend to be against unwed motherhood, they really aren't against it, or they'd allow stigmatizing. We know what...
Wait, hold it. Before we get to liberals being against the stigmatization of unwed teenage pregnancy, stick to the cigarette displays for a second. Is the mayor right, and isn't this a giant step in the nanny state? Isn't this like the big gulp drinks?
Yes, and like big gulp.
And so
I think people are aware. I always claim I don't believe the studies on smoking, but I'm joking. People know smoking is bad for you, and it's... all of the stigma of the world comes down on this one behavior.
But, Ann, the thing is, it's Pagovian, which means, just as Arthur Bagot taught us, if you make a personal decision that ends up costing others money, somebody has to pick up that tab. That's what we found with smoking. There are externalities, not just the secondhand smoke, the pollution, etc., the health care cost to all of us. So if we're picking up the tab, somebody's got to help pay for that. Same thing with obesity. Those are the things that Bloomberg is addressing.
But we didn't ask to pick up the tab. It's Obamacare that foisted us. I knew we'd have this argument.
No, Ann, you're actually wrong about that.
By the way,
healthcare costs
if we have to worry about smokers because of Obamacare, I think we're going to have to do something about the gay bathhouses, because AIDS is very expensive, and if I'm paying for it, how about discouraging that behavior?
Do they still have gay bathhouses?
Yeah, Ann, are you there? So here's the thing.
Okay, a gay bar. You get my point. That is obviously
you're not making the right point. It's about insurance actuaries, and if they determine that things cost more money to a broad population, then you see insurance premiums go up. But we also know that the rest of us are hit with those costs. If gay bars actually were costing everyone a great deal of money and we were picking up the tab, you might see some enforcement there. But that's not the case. Obesity, yes.
Wait. Why do you say that's not the case?
That we're picking up the tab for
aren't we in a vast majority of
required
AIDS
to be covered
patients
under
on some kind of government coverage, because AIDS medication costs so much money?
AIDS doesn't only impact homosexuals.
True.
That's the point. And illegal drug use. It's mostly in this country. It is homosexual behavior. And by the way, I'm not the one who wants to do anything about it. I'm just saying, if the argument is smoking, well, we all have to pay. Sodomy, we all have to pay. You're the one making the argument. Fine, go ahead, have your bathhouses.
Now I'm pro-bathhouse.
Oh, I don't know. Are you?
No, she's anti-bathhouse. I'm saying you have to crack down on sodomy.
I don't even...
you have to
sodomy is a very interesting topic. Condoms, very interesting topic.
You have to demand it.
Back. Here's my thing. Adults should do what they want to do with their own bodies. Let me say that. However...
Except in the case of smoking?
Whatever the decision you make about your your own body, you pick up the tab for the consequences. Now, let's go back to nannies. There's not just one kind of nanny. There's the kind of nanny that you don't seem to like and you don't seem to like, who's motivated by wanting to save lives. Bloomberg's that kind of nanny. There are also other kinds of nannies that want you to eat more and more of the wrong thing, and they're motivated by profit. There's not just one kind of nanny.
And is there more than one kind of nanny?
I don't know what difference. No, Bloomberg is a politically correct nanny, as are you.
But isn't Bloomberg more
smoking,
than
but not sodomy,
okay.
not actually
Sodomy, unless you're the one.
Well, can we get off sodomy for a second? Going back to Bloomberg.
No, that costs a lot more.
Okay, going back to Bloomberg
and the nanny state. Let's have the nanny state.
But at what point is the nanny state really leadership? And it's helping New Yorkers to become safer and healthier and live longer and have fewer crime?
It's whatever they're chattering about at Zabar's that suddenly Bloomberg is going to crack down on. But
no, the rise of diabetes. Well, that's a nonsense statement.
Wait, Anne's rolling her eyes. Let her finish this
diabetes.
Okay, go back to Zabar's. Quick, you distracted me.
The behaviors that liberals approve of, they will not stigmatize. The behaviors they disapprove of, and it has nothing to do with the body count. It has nothing to do with health care. No, illegitimacy, they're very upset Bloomberg is stigmatizing. Sodomy will not stigmatize. But smoking, if we're looking at it for health costs, I can think of a lot of things that are doing more costs.
People's sexual behaviors behind the doors not directly impact me. Their smoking costs.
You can smoke behind the doors.
Hold on. Mimi Roth, what do you think about stop and frisk, where police can be proactive if you enjoy and you appreciate proactive government behavior to prevent a harm? Nothing is more grievous than murder. What about stop and frisk to search kids or young people they feel are suspicious to get their guns before they use them?
I have to say that in many cases it's proved effective. So I'm not completely against stopping and frisking. I don't think that it is, I think it's necessary. I think profiling is necessary. That's the times we live in.
So that's a stunning answer from a liberal. And
you guys called me the liberal. I'm case by case. I don't know how I got that label.
That's fine with me. And what do you think about stop and frisk?
Well, as you know, I want to use drones for stop and frisk.
You mean just like a hellfire strike? What do you think about stop and frisk, seriously?
It's saving lives. I mean, of course I'm for it. And I'm sorry I'd forgotten his name. I didn't know you were going to ask me about stop and frisk. But there was a black councilman a few months ago, a small child, like 4 years old, was shot in a drive-by.
Rwanda, Cuba. But it's worth it, say conservatives like Ann Coulter, which depresses the heck out of me because you're so smart. Why don't you get the folly of this drug war?
I have one statement for you, the welfare state. No, people cannot do whatever they want to do, live however they want to live, as long as Ann has to pay for it when they can't hold a job and raise their own kids and buy their own food and pay their own rent. You get rid of the welfare state and we'll talk about people sitting home shooting heroin all day. But right now, and now I have to pay for their health care.
So because we have a socialized welfare system, we have to give up all these other freedoms? Because people...
Yeah, as long as Ann is paying for it.
How about motorcycles? They be illegal?
No, because they tend to kill themselves. Same thing with smoking. Smokers die early. The tobacco companies won't tell you that, but smokers save the Social Security Administration
money. Save us money on Social Security. Good. So they're helping us out.
Yes, they are. But as long as we have a welfare state, we have to care what people do with their lives and whether they can be productive citizens. Now, if you got rid of the welfare state, then I would say, I'd just go back to the Constitution. I think the Founding Fathers got it right. Let the states decide, let the localities decide, and then, you have a 50-state competition. One state will be legalizing prostitution and drugs and, all the other things you wacky libertarians love. Another state, the nice conservative states like Alabama, will not. And we can compare and see what policies work, what policies lead to a productive, happy citizenry. But until you get rid of the welfare state, not interested in hearing about welfare or legalizing drugs.
All right, well, let's accept your argument that there's all this harm from the drugs. What about the harm from the law? What about all the dead bodies? What about all the people murdering each other? We're creating death all over the world with our law.
Well, I mean, I think you could say that for just the murder laws themselves. People murder for lots of reasons.
We have no wine murders or cigarette murders or cartels because it's legal.
Not just because it's legal. I think there is now we're living in the wacky libertarian fantasy world of no welfare state.
No welfare. Let's assume
so we're
no welfare
moving to
state.
that, and
Let's have no welfare state, but
yes,
let's assume.
we agree on that.
Okay.
We're assuming that. Now, I would want to see the results of Alabama versus California. I'm guessing that they would have different laws on the moral, social issues. I would want to take a look at that, and I'd have an open mind. But I do think there is a difference between drugs and alcohol. People can drink wine over dinner without getting drunk. Smoking, certainly. People smoke and stay up all night working. A lot of work gets done on tobacco, whereas drugs are pretty much specifically just to get high. It's not, I'm
But a lot of people
the smell
drink
of this
to get
marijuana.
high.
Yeah, but that's more of a subsidiary point.
But you think most people drink for the taste, not to get high? I admit I drink to get a little buzz.
No, a lot of people drink wine with dinner without getting drunk.
A lot of people do, but a lot of people drink to get high. We don't try to ban it. I mean, isn't getting high, altering your consciousness, part of freedom? People want to do that?
The other difference between alcohol and drugs, for one thing, I do think there's a difference that one is pretty much exclusively get high. The other one is I like a gin and tonic, or I'm having wine with dinner, and maybe you get a little bit of a buzz. But the other thing is you want to have a few things that are illegal that aren't that harmful, you know, because if daddy's smoking pot with him at the Little League game, then they're going to have to do something much harder just to defy mommy and daddy. But no, right now we do still have a stigma attached to illegal drugs, and we ought to be, I'm just saying we ought to be very careful before removing that stigma, because it's very hard to go back, as the country found out with Prohibition. And by the way, during Prohibition, all of the alcohol-related diseases, accidents, murders, homicides did go down substantially.
Murder
Cirrhosis
went
of the liver.
Maybe cirrhosis of the liver went down, but murder went
Accidents
up
related
sharply.
to alcohol.
Murder went way up. We have a graph of murder, I believe.
I don't believe that.
Here's the murder rate. How about Holland? You talk about the stigma. Holland decriminalized marijuana. Are all the kids smoking in Holland?
A lot of American kids are.
A lot of people go
Holland.
there to smoke. But what about the Dutch kids?
I don't think we think of Holland as an economic or military powerhouse. I don't think we want to set that as our standard. And by the way, they're lovely people.
And for the record,
but it's
17%
kind of a mediocre
of
country.
Americans say they've smoked marijuana, 5% of the Dutch. So despite legalization, it's less popular.
I mean, you can't be saying that if you legalize something, fewer people will do it. If you legalize something, more people will do it.
That's what happened in Holland. They took the sexiness out of the illegal.
No, that's a crazy theory. The theory is it's a different populace. It's a different population. Obviously,
it went
we have
up after legalization, and then it went down with that population. Sure, it's all legal. People tried it. Okay, this isn't Nirvana.
No, that is one
then
theory,
it went down.
but I don't believe it. I think generally, not generally, an iron law of economics is you make something illegal, you get less of it. You subsidize it, you get more of it. And whatever it shows about the immediate legalization, maybe other people were coming across the border, I don't know what it is, but I think the fact that only 5% of people in Holland doing illegal drugs versus legal drugs versus 17% where it's illegal in this country shows that this country has a population that is more susceptible to taking drugs.
Could be, and having it be illegal, see, it hasn't deterred these 17%.
Yes, it has. I mean, that's like saying the murder laws haven't deterred people. How many murders would occur if it wasn't illegal? You can't say because we have zero incidents of something that a law making it illegal has not reduced its incidence.
How about the hypocrisy? You have Bush, Obama admitting they've used these drugs, Sarah Palin. And we want to lock up other people who do it? Newt Gingrich, Clarence Thomas.
No, but look, I think probably all of those people, or you could get a similar group of people, would say they have run red lights, sped in school zones, told lies. That doesn't mean these are good things to do. It means humans do little things like that.
Oh, I can't convince her. Thank you, Ann Coulter.